Honestly, if this movie succeeded in doing anything, it succeeded in making me really, really crave fried alligator nuggets. Crawl is the newest film produced by Sam Raimi and directed by Alexandre Aja. I really hope I'm pronouncing that right. It stars Kaya Scodelario and Barry Pepper, and it tells the story of Haley, a young woman who ends up trapped with her father in her flooding childhood home in the middle of a Category 5 hurricane. Also, there are alligators. Aja is a filmmaker I have a very tenuous relationship with. Arguably his most popular film, High Tension, is a film that I don't particularly understand the hype for or really even like. The only film of his that I really actually enjoyed was Horns, and that was more of a dark fantasy / romance than an actual straight up horror movie. And now there's Crawl, the newest entry in the dangerous animal stalks helpless human prey in dangerous situation subgenre. And I'm admittedly not that big a fan of that type of film, and this movie, for me, it's kind of a mixed bag. There are some things about it that I really loved, and then others that ranged from just not really working for me to being downright laughable. As far as positives go, I will say that this movie functioned very well for what it was. There is not an ounce of fat here. It doesn't waste any time getting into what you came to see, which is some bonkers alligator survival horror action. And this movie ends up having some really great production value, especially for a film that is essentially one long action set piece. The premise of this movie is actually pretty excellent. It's very relatable, it's very scary. Being stuck in your house in the middle of a Category 5 storm is a very realistic fear, especially in this day and age with all the crazy natural disasters that are happening around the world. And when the movie was about that element, it was great. There's a sequence toward the end of this film where the levee breaks and their boat is sent crashing through the wall of a house, and they're being tossed around by the waves, and furniture is flooding everywhere and nearly crushing them. It's the most intense sequence in the movie, and honestly, I was on the edge of my seat for it. And when it comes to delivering a super intense scenario that you can easily insert yourself into, this movie delivers. But it's the details of those scenarios that made it really difficult for me to fully give myself over to and enjoy this film. The human element here is wildly lacking. There isn't really much to Haley or her father. Kaya Scodelario gives a really good performance, but it's one that is only as good as what she's given, and what she's given isn't really much. There's not much characterization here. She's very underwritten, and we don't get enough time to know her before shit pops off. The only reason we have to root for her in the end is she's the protagonist, and that's her dad. The alligator bits themselves are kind of more silly than anything. There are some really great bits of CGI where the gators look like they're really there, and then other times they look like a really high-end PS2 game. There are a ton of expendable characters who just show up to get eaten. Gators are literally crashing through windows of the house. And honestly, it all just feels so ridiculously implausible that I couldn't get into it. And every time the movie had me hooked and was pulling me in with a really crazy intense sequence, they'd throw an alligator in there, and suddenly I would just end up rolling my eyes because all the realism just gets sucked out immediately. And on the subject of alligators, alligators do not act like this. I literally got out of the movie, and a friend of mine is a herpetologist, and I messaged her immediately and said, hey, I got some questions about gators. And I reiterate, gators do not act like this. Alligators are slow, solitary hunters that do not really require much sustenance to live, and they're stealth predators too. But the gators in this movie? Nah, they're just like ravenous swarm creatures that eat everything in sight. They're hunting based on sound, and they're hunting in packs, and they're just ravenous and eating everyone. There is a scene where somebody is literally swarmed and eaten alive by a group of gators, and I literally laughed out loud. You have these weird tonal conflicts because you have this really serious natural disaster movie, and then you're throwing in these ridiculously silly moments that feel out of a B-movie like Piranha, where gators are just swarming around a man and eating him. When you're priding yourself on realism and a realistic scenario, and you're throwing in the most laughably implausible death by gator swarm, it takes me out of the movie instantly because I'm left feeling like they don't know what they want this movie to be. In the end, Crawl isn't the worst thing ever. It's passable. The word fine is appropriate. It reminds me a bit of The Shallows back in 2016 in that they're both dangerous animal stalks human prey in dangerous situation flicks that are arguably better than most. But in my opinion, at least, The Shallows gave me a bit more to chew on in the end, and it didn't veer into the laughably implausible scenarios that Crawl did. If you're looking for depth in your films, this is not the movie for you, unless you count water depth. But as far as animal attack or natural disaster movies go, there are plenty of worse ones out there for you to see. I'm going to say that Crawl is good for fans of animal attack movies. If you want a decently fun way to spend 90 minutes where you can just turn your brain off and watch a cool, intense movie with a lot of really dumb moments, I'm not going to say to avoid this one. Give it a watch if you're looking for something to do. It's fast food, but it's admittedly well-made fast food. Me personally, I'm just not the biggest fan of these kinds of films. I can acknowledge some of the really cool things it did, it wasn't for me. I know there are plenty of people out there who will watch this movie and have a really good time with it. It's just, this subgenre and these types of films are really not my style, and it's hard for me to get into them. But I'm not going to knock anybody who does like it. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you like this channel and you want to see more, click down there, like, comment, subscribe. I have a Patreon link down in the description if you want to be like any of these cool people right here. Please consider donating. Even $1 helps. It helps us make this channel better, helps us grow our content, make new, better quality stuff for you all to enjoy. I would really appreciate it, but even if you don't, thank you so much for watching anyway, and I will see you all very soon.
Come on, you son of a bitch!